This is the story of why I dumped my EV and I got this Toyota GR86. I actually really enjoyed my time with the Mustang Mach-E. I think it's actually a fantastic EV, but it just wasn't the right choice for me. We're gonna talk about the positives and the negatives that I found, and the first thing that I found driving an EV is doing road trips. The charging experience, while not being in the Tesla network, is not very good. Let me explain. When you're not charging on the Tesla supercharger network, you're dealing with a whole bunch of individual different networks like Electrify America, EVgo, Flow, and so forth, and you don't really get a good harmonized charging experience when you're on the road and doing road trips. What you get is a hodgepodge. It's like a pizza with a bunch of different ingredients, and some of them are pretty tasty, and some of them don't taste so good. When you pull into an EV charging station and you're new at this like I was at the beginning, you're gonna find that things don't work as they should. You might show up and some of the chargers are broken. Up to sometimes a third of the chargers are broken at a station. Oftentimes the software doesn't communicate correctly with your car. And the list sort of goes on and on and on, and I think you should have a successful charging attempt on your very first try, maybe 99 times out of 100, but it's nowhere near that. So unlike charging at home, which is a really seamless, a pretty easy experience, when you're charging on the road, I found that about half the time when I tried to charge, I had a problem trying to charge on my first attempt. And that's not good, because when you think about going to a gas station and you want to fill up your car, when was the last time that you went to a pump and the actual pump didn't work? Not that often, probably 1 in 10 times, maybe less. So one of the first days I had the car, I went to shoot a video with another Mach-E owner. I did a Mach-E GT versus a Mach-E GT performance video and checked out the acceleration, which is amazing, by the way. And at the end of that video, I was at around 15–20% state of charge, and I was north of LA, and I had to get back down into LA. I had roughly a 60-mile drive. So on the console, on the huge 17-inch screen, I punched in the charger that I was going to go to, and it recommended that I go to a ChargePoint charger. And it was along the way, so I went there, I rolled up, hey, there's 2 chargers free, this looks pretty good. They showed on the screen that these are both available, and I rolled up, and one of them was already dead. So I tried to charge at the second charger, I plugged it in, and it just wouldn't connect. I kept getting an error. So I called them, and it sounded like they were on the dark side of the moon, Pink Floyd reference. Could barely understand the person, but what I was able to discern was that the charger actually wasn't in service, and even though it showed up on the Ford app that it wasn't, and so now I'm stuck with a pretty low state of charge. Definitely couldn't make it home, so I punched in another charger on the screen, and I went to the next charger. So I get to the next charger, and it's at a Ford dealer, and I figured this is gonna be a pretty good thing. It's at a Ford dealer. I get there, it's after hours, and there's a truck parked in front of the charger, so I'm iced out, as the EV fans would like to say. I can't charge. So now I figure I can't rely on what's on the dashboard. I'm gonna pull out my phone, and I used a different app. I think I used a better route planner, and I figured out a charger that apparently was free. So I get to the next charger, looks like it's gonna be pretty good. I plug in, and in fact, it does work, hallelujah. So this is the third time that I'm trying to charge on my first road trip, which wasn't even very long, and I had to go to 3 chargers to get a charger that actually worked. So I'm a little more experienced now. I know that you can't really rely on what's on the dashboard necessarily, even though it has gotten better, and I've decided that it's much better to use apps on your phone to figure out what kind of charger you're gonna go to and how far you can get, and the state of that charging station, how many are open, how many are not working, all that kind of good stuff is much more reliable if you're using an app like ChargePoint, Electrify America, EVgo, etc., and also a better route planner. Those actually work really well. So ultimately, I was a newbie at that point, but what I really learned is if you're gonna be doing road trips in an EV, it requires a whole different level of planning than it does if you're gonna take a gas car, which requires basically punching your destination into Google and you go. When you're driving an EV on a road trip, you really need to figure out how far your destination is, how far you can go on your charge, and what your estimated state of charge is gonna be when you get there. And yeah, that sounds a little bit complicated, and it really isn't as bad as I make it sound when you start doing this, but when you're starting out, it does cause range anxiety. Now, I didn't sell the Mach-E because of build quality. I think the build quality in that car was super, super good. Probably one of the best things I've ever seen Ford do in terms of build quality. The interior on that car is excellent. I really like the seats, I really like the materials, I like the surfaces. I liked everything about the interior of that car, and overall I liked the way it drove. Now, being an SUV, it had a ton of cargo space actually, and unlike a lot of SUVs, it had a really functional frunk. So you could put a cooler in there, you could put an ice cooler in there, you could put all kinds of stuff, and you had a lot of cargo space in the back. So really practical, and it's a really good city car, and let me tell you why. When you're on a road trip, range anxiety is kind of a big deal, but when you drive around the city like most people do, 7 days a week, the range is not a big deal at all. That car had only 260 miles of range, and the way I drove it, I got about 220. But when you think about it, this car gets about 220, 230 miles of range. Sure, I can fill it up in a couple minutes, but 220 miles when you drive around the city is not a big deal, because if you're driving an average of 30, 70 miles a day, you only need to charge up every few days. And if you have a charger at home, you don't even need to visit a gas station. It's super convenient. Range anxiety, not a big deal. And again, super low operating cost. And in a lot of cities, you can get into the carpool lane solo. But let's talk about the real reason why I dumped EVs and got a gas car is because of this. This is the Toyota GR86. And if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you'll know that I am a hardcore sports car nerd, and I just had that itch to get an affordable, inexpensive car that I can take to the track and not have to worry about operating costs so much, and something that is super, super fun to drive. And this fits the bill. Now, I'll be the first to admit that this car is essentially a toy for me. It is a plaything. It's something that I'm fortunate enough to be able to afford, that I can take to the track and enjoy. It's not something I need, and I don't think a GR86 is something that anybody actually needs, but I bought this because of passion. I like light cars. This weighs 2,800 pounds. It is almost a little bit more than half the weight of the Mach-E GT. It has a low amount of power. It has 228 horsepower. It has a manual transmission. It has a really nice chassis. It's really balanced. You can toss it around corners. It's lightweight, and it is a fun car to drive, and that's kind of why I got it. So the GR86 is not a car that I need, and actually I didn't really need the Mach-E either, because I'm fortunate enough to work at home and I go on the road to shoot videos, and I don't really need a car for day-to-day purposes. I get press cars. I don't really need to go anywhere. It's kind of a sad life that us people who do video live. However, that's one of the reasons why I sold it, because I figured let somebody else have that car. Electric cars are very difficult to get right now, and I was able to get top dollar for it, not lose any money, and made a couple bucks, so hey, why not? So I'm not anti-EV at all. In fact, I really enjoyed my time with the Mach-E GT Performance. God, that's a mouthful to say. Very inexpensive to run. It really is a lot of fun to drive, especially if you're driving in the city. And I think it's a great car for commuting. It just wasn't for me. My passion is sports cars, and that's kind of where I'm directing the channel right now, is more into sports cars. So I've done videos on the new Z. I've done videos on the new Mustang. I've done videos on my Supra, and I'm gonna do more videos like that, and I'm planning to take this to the track and compete in the 8.6 Cup, which is a series, a time trial series, and basically compete this in stock class to keep the cost as low as possible. So that's where I'm headed with this car. If you want to check out track videos, definitely subscribe. I know a lot of people aren't into those, but I'm going to be doing more content centered around sports cars and performance, and where my passion really lies. So if that's something you are interested in, go ahead, click subscribe. There's another video over here right now. Click on that too. My name is Eric. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.